Well, here. This make you all nostalgic?
You know, that is actually before my time. That is a winner, though.
The Last of Us has become one of the rare video game franchises to be simultaneously one of the most beloved and most hated. Ever since the release of The Last of Us Part 2, and hell, even before that, the series has become victim of some pretty nasty vitriol. It's one thing to criticize something thoughtfully and fairly, but once you inject anger into that criticism, you start to lose people on what you have to say. The Last of Us Part 2 inadvertently became the start of the franchise's decline in the public eye. 2 years after the release of the second game, and after a number of leaks that suggested it to be true, Naughty Dog revealed that they were re-releasing the first game with updated visuals, frame rates, and accessibility options. This of course was followed by many already writing off the game as a cash grab. That's a fair way of looking at it, considering that the original PS3 release was ported to PS4 with higher frame rates and resolutions already. Another point of contention was the absence of the faction's multiplayer mode. The original game launched with a multiplayer mode that was considered an afterthought during development, but quickly became a beloved part of the original release. To make the situation worse, Sony would be releasing this version of The Last of Us for a whopping $70. So it's easy to see why most people would write this re-release off as just a cash grab. Cut to September 2nd, and the game has released. As a point of clarification, this is not a complete review of The Last of Us. That's a video I plan to do later in the future, and I will use the remastered version of the game as the basis for when I do a full review. We all know The Last of Us is a great game, and considering that the contents of the story hasn't been changed at all, it would feel weird trying to make this video a full review. This video is meant to point out what makes this version of the game different, and in a lot of ways better than the original game. The first order of business is answering the age-old question: is The Last of Us Part 2 worth $70? And the answer to that is, it's up to you. That might seem like a cop-out answer, but when playing the game, I found myself to have a very positive experience with its changes overall. I also recognize that not everyone will have the same experience as me, and that's important to note. I personally think that the $70 was worth it. Here's why. Let's get the most obvious thing out of the way first. This game is absolutely gorgeous. I would do side-by-side comparisons with the original game, but there's plenty of videos that do that already. The objective fact of the matter is that the game does look better than the original game. There have been improvements to character models, lighting, particle effects, textures, facial animations, even gore.
Kill all of them! Hey, get him!
Everything visually about the game has been improved in one way or another. No matter which way you slice it, the new visuals are an improvement over the original game's visuals. To be frank, I think the visual upgrades in this game hold the least amount of weight when it comes to why this version is better than the original. The real reason why I think this version is better is because of the improvements to the controls and the addition of extensive accessibility options. The game plays a lot like Part 2, which I always thought was an improvement over the original when it came to its combat. The aiming doesn't feel as wishy-washy, and if you upgrade the weapon sway to max, your reticle doesn't move at all when aiming. Having this makes the game so incredibly fun to play. I always liked the original game's combat, but never loved it because of how much I felt the controls hindered me from getting better. Everything about the combat feels way less janky and stiff. This makes it to where you can pull off some pretty flashy and fun gunfights when going through the game's encounters. Part 1 fixes a lot of the issues I had with the original game's combat, and that's something that I find a lot of value in. In direct relation to combat, Part 1 includes a whole suite of accessibility options that allows players to tweak the game to their liking. Pretty much most, if not all, of Part 2's accessibility options have made it to Part 1. You have the ability to not only change things when it comes to the UI, but you also have difficulty sliders to make things harder or easier. The ability to change different aspects of the difficulty is a great feature, and I hope to see it in more games in the future. The biggest thing to talk about when it comes to the accessibility options is the fact that this allows more people to experience what me and many others consider to be a masterpiece. Games having more accessibility options like this is always a good thing, and I implore more developers to try their best to implement as many options as possible. Part 1 also features a huge swath of unlockable extras once you complete the main story. Like the past few Naughty Dog releases, you gain points for completing certain actions and use those points to unlock different skins, filters, and concept art. This might not make the package worth it for certain people, but I always welcome unlockable extras in video games. As far as negatives go, I barely have any to go over. I had some visual glitches here and there that always caught me off guard, but never enough to warrant calling the game unfinished or broken. The main thing I was running into was some pop-in for certain assets. The most noticeable being these assets on this balcony in the Pittsburgh hotel. I'm not exactly sure if this is because the game is trying to offload these assets to save on memory, or if it's just a straight up bug, but I at least wanted to acknowledge this as being the biggest visual glitch I found. Overall, I personally thought The Last of Us Part 1 was worth the money. Being a fan of the original game and Part 2, I had a great time going back and playing the revised version of one of my favorite games of all time. You can really tell that Naughty Dog gave a shit, and wanted to make something that really hit the level of quality they've always been known for. As it stands, I recommend this game to those who are already fans of the series, and to any potential fans out there who may be interested in playing the original game but with better controls, visuals, and accessibility options. I love the original game, but this is my new favorite way to play it. The adjustments to combat alone make it something that I want to come back to and replay certain encounters. On top of that, the visual enhancements make the story hit harder in my opinion. All I ask for those who have played it and think that it is not worth $70 is to critique it fairly and to not let your anger get in the way. It's been hard being a fan of this series in recent years because of the amount of people who insist on dogpiling it. If you haven't been happy with the direction of the series so far, that's fine. I just ask that you don't ruin other people's enjoyment of something that means a great deal to them.
I swear.